Hello and welcome to today's session, Meraki, the platform of the future. My name is Fadi Sharabim and I'm system engineer with Cisco Meraki. In today's session, we're gonna talk about the future of networks. But before going into the details of the future, we have to step back and look into what has changed in the network industry first. And then we will cover the challenges of the new networks. And of course, we'll talk about how Cisco Meraki solved some of those challenges, or almost all of them. And then also talking towards the end about how Meraki platform will set you up for the future. So starting with looking back into what has changed in the industry, what has changed in the IT or network industry. So if we look into 15 to 20 years ago, networks was pretty simple and straightforward. You used to have computers like desktops, and those desktops require access to a network, so you basically go and wire them up, like install a cable from your computer all the way to your modem, switch, router, whatever device you use as your gateway, and that's how you can get your device connected to the network. So from an IT perspective, it was quite easy and straightforward because all what I needed to do to secure my network is to go to those devices that I know physically where they are because I know the cables, and potentially I just need to install antivirus firewall on the machine to protect them. And that's how I protect my network. So networks was easy, straightforward. We didn't have wireless back in the day. It's just all wired. So as long as you protect your premise, then your network is safe. And then, of course, when you protect your devices that connected to your network, which at the time was mainly desktops, your network is protected and secured. But when looking into networks today, we have seen a lot of new devices trying to connect to the network. And wireless, I would blame wireless for that because, with old networks, it was easy with wired that you control your network, but now with wireless, you open yourself up to a lot of devices that try or seek connectivity to the network. I'll give you a couple of examples of those devices that I'm referencing to. Something like sensors. Those are small devices. Normally they require connectivity back to their services that control them, and then potentially those services will control them to turn on lights or do something or do some actions. So those devices or sensors are quite limited with what they can do, but they need access. They need actually connectivity. Recently, I've seen something really cool and interesting that I personally liked was door lockers. So those door lockers can be controlled from your phones, like from an application on your phone remotely using the internet. And then you can open the door and close the door using those applications. Not just this, but also you can give like passwords for people to put in your locker and then get access to your premise, maybe for a day or two or something like that. So you can actually limit the time for the code, and then that code will expire. And I found it really cool, especially if you use your apartment for business and something like Airbnb, so you can actually allow people to come in for a specific period of time. Let's say, if you hire someone to clean your apartment, then you give them a password to come in for a day or a couple of hours, and then this password will be expired. That needs connectivity. That needs actually connectivity to the network, to the internet. Another common thing that we've seen recently is watches, like something like Apple Watch. It's a very smart device, can do a lot of things. That device needs connectivity, need internet access. So when I look into that, of course, the more devices you add to your network, the more complicated network you need to have. And when I look into the complication here, I actually think from a security perspective. Allowing them to access is pretty easy. Wi-Fi can get them all connected, but how can I secure them and how can I secure my network from those devices? So as I mentioned, back in the day, it was easy to go to a desktop and install a piece of software to protect that laptop or desktop, Now, if I want to protect the door locker, I cannot install software on that door locker. It's just basically a pretty simple device that need access to the network, so it actually can get access to the server. But how about if that device get compromised, that means my network can be compromised as well. So these are the new challenges that we're currently facing, that the devices connecting to the network are different. And the more devices trying to connect to the network, the more security I need to have, the more visibility I also need to have. So if I actually start to look into, okay, with these new demands, what is the expectation of modern networks then? Because if I have those endpoints trying to connect, then my network needs to cope with that. So when you look into the new expectations here, the first thing that we're going to see is secure access, making sure I do know who is connecting to my network or who is trying to connect to my network. And then when I get them to my network, I need to protect those devices as well as protect my network. So control the access as well as, of course, control the threats. So that's the first expectations. When they get access to the network, they normally seek connectivity to some services. So if I'm a user coming to the office in the morning, I would expect them to connect to maybe my email or connect to my payroll system if I work in finance or something. So I need connectivity. And when we talk about connectivity, as an IT experts here, we need to offer reliable, fast connectivity to those services. So that's what we kind of call smart connectivity, to offer reliable service to our end users and customers. So we will talk a little bit more about how our network can work in such an environment and how we can actually use the SD-WAN to solve reliability issues or performance issues. And that's great. So if I can secure my access and can have smart routing or smart connectivity, then everyone should be happy, which is true. But expectations still doesn't stop there, or the expectation doesn't stop there. So actually, people now looking into the network to work as a sensor. So how can I benefit from my network? How can I use the network to give me more intelligent reports about what's going on, where my users are, what they're doing, what they're interested in, and so on and so forth. So having the network to act as a sensor is quite key requirements today. And the last thing, of course, analytics and efficiency, like how my network can analyze its problems and potentially solve them without me interacting or do anything. So that's another new expectations of the modern networks. So in the next 10 minutes, we will cover each individual, I would say, section in a bit of details. And when we get to the lab, we will actually cover those things in the lab and see how they work in action. So starting with secure access, I like to think about this like my house. If I get someone knocking in my door or buzzing them into my place, I normally first identify who they are. So if a salesman trying to sell something to me, a product to me, I normally will open the door, but I will not let them in my place, right? But if they are my friends, I will just identify them as my friends and I will let them access my place. And of course, when they access my place, I decide what they're supposed to be doing inside my place. So if they are my friends, maybe they will get access to the living room, the dining room, if I'm fancy and I have a dining room. And also, maybe they get access to the bathroom. So I define that. I welcome them, but I also limit their access. But I'll give you another example. If my wife actually coming in, then my wife has full access to my place, right? So that's the thing. That's the difference between a wife and between a friend. I actually allow them in, but I also limit or unlimit their access to my place. Same thing with networks. So you actually, the admin of the network, you need to identify first who are supposed to be connected to your network. And from there, I can define, if you an Apple Watch, then I'll get you access only to certain things. If you actually maybe the CEO, then you're probably going to get access to everything. And we'll look into before, like that's kind of like new expectations, or that's what ideally what we're supposed to be doing. Before we actually seen some IT admins, they go and have like a super restricted rule to almost block you from accessing anything and only allow you to access corporate related stuff. And that's of course not efficient, doesn't help a lot of people because if I look into something like social media today, the definition of social media 5 or 10 years ago, it was more for fun. Now actually people use social media to advertise, jobs or market their products and do all those kind of things. So I cannot really block them or restrict them that much because it will impact efficiency. Or the other option is to be completely open and allow everyone to access everything. And in this case, people will not be efficient and you can open yourself to threats if you're not actually knowing what's going on. So ideally, what we need to do here is we sit down, profile our users. So I know that you're an employee, but maybe you use corporate device or you use your own device. So I'll make sure I'll give you policy that'll be different if you use your corporate device comparing to using your private or personal device. And if you're a watch or a sensor, maybe I will only give you access to the application that you're supposed to access and nothing else. And that's how, when we look into networks today and looking into access to networks today, that's ideally the right scenario that we should have. And of course, if I have a guest coming into my premise, I probably give them access only to the internet and nothing related to the network. And when we do the actual lab, we will look into how we can use something like Meraki System Manager to profile devices and apply different policies based on what they have on the device, as well as integrating with network access control servers, doing .1x, and in our case here we will use Windows MPS server, which is quite common and everyone almost using it. Of course you can use Cisco ICE and other products, but for our demo today we will use Windows MPS. And then for guest access, we will cover a little bit how we can use the built-in features that we have with Meraki, but also we do have an API, captive portal API, that can be utilized, so you can integrate with other systems, or you can build your own captive portals to allow users to input some data before granting access to the network. So that's great. Now we offered access or secure access to our network. We know who they are and we start to put some profiles around them. The next stop here is allow them access services. So back to the house example, when I invite my friends to my place, my expectations here, or their expectations here, is they're going to do something. We're not going to sit in the living room doing nothing. Maybe I will have a dinner or lunch with them, or maybe we're going to watch a football game or do something, do some activities, services, right? So same thing for networks. Once the person get connected to the network, they need to access services here. And for us as an IT admins, it's really important that we give them fast, reliable access to the network or to the services. So if I look into the options that we have here, especially when we have like multiple links, like dual links, I can load balance across those two links based on bandwidth. So if I have 10 meg and 1 meg, then I will actually share the load across the two based on the amount of bandwidth that we have available, which is good, but it's not really efficient. The second option is to do policy-based routing. So I actually go and say, maybe for my voice traffic, I will use the premium link I have. And for less important traffic to my business, like maybe YouTube is not that important to me, I will use maybe an internet service. So what I'm doing here as an IT admin, I'm just defining which traffic to go where based on the importance of this traffic to me and to my business. But that's still not ideal, because what if my premium links start to perform poorly? That's where dynamic path selection or performance-based routing will come into the game. Because with performance-based routing, I can actually define thresholds for my latency, packet drop, jitter, and then I can tell my devices, to move the traffic whenever we hit the thresholds. So if I use Meraki MX or our UTM device, I can define this policy and tell the MX if I actually hit performance issue on my my primary link for this application, I need the traffic to be moved across to the secondary link, assuming the secondary link is performing well or better than the primary link. And then, of course, whenever everything comes back to normal, I need the traffic to be moved back. And that's the concept of SD-WAN. That's how SD-WAN works, and that's how you can use the MX to smartly route your traffic across the the two links that you have. But when we talk about gateway, we have to talk also about security. So if I actually have hybrid network like MPLS as my primary or MPLS as a private link, and then I have internet as a secondary link, then this internet link need to be protected. Some customers actually go with dual internet links and no private links at all. So that's really, that means we have to have a security appliance to protect our network. And the beauty of using Meraki MX, you can have one box to do both, SD-WAN and security on the same physical box. With Meraki MX, we take advantage, a huge advantage of using Cisco Talos, which basically the intelligence system that we do have at Cisco, that looking into all the patterns across the internet and being able to analyze the potential threats and identify them. And then what will happen after identifying threats, this Cisco Talos system will go and update all the devices or all Cisco security devices across the world, across the globe. And that's a huge advantage because you wouldn't require to go and do any manual updates or any patches to solve those problems or protect your network. Basically, Cisco Talos is investigating that for you, and then once we hit any, I would say, malicious or virus, we will be able to identify them and update all your Meraki boxes automatically and dynamically. Now, talking about network as a sensor, and this is really important now because when we look into different verticals today, they have the network not just to give Wi-Fi or to give connectivity, they look into the network to operate as a sensor and give some intelligent reports to the business. And if I actually look into here, like how we look into this network as a sensor concept, we actually look into this from two different angles, operation efficiency and from also business intelligence. So if you look into this slide and you look at the bottom of this slide, you will see all the Meraki devices that we do have, like the Meraki access points, the MXs, UTM devices, Meraki switches, system manager, Meraki cameras. But the key component here is the software layer that we have on top. And this software layer is add this operation efficiency and business intelligence. So if you look into the operation efficiency to start with, you see something like Meraki Wireless Health, which is a feature that we added to our Meraki access points. Wireless Health can go and analyze the performance of your wireless and tell you if we have any problems, and it will tell you what those problems are and how to solve them. So instead of you going through a lot of logs or 100 lines of logs to analyze what went wrong, Wireless Health is doing this already for you. Something like Meraki Insight, which is a software that you can add on top of the MX, that can actually help you to analyze the performance of your network from your LAN through the WAN to your application and tell you if your LAN is performing poorly or your application actually is overutilized and start to drop packets. So instead of, again, you going and troubleshooting the problems that you might be experiencing, you can actually rely on the network to tell you what went wrong and where you need to invest your energy to troubleshoot your network. But also when we look into from business intelligence perspective and have something like Meraki cameras that can work as a sensor, with the cameras, it actually can tell you how many people visited your retail store today, and you can do like a comparison between your stores. So the security camera now, not just sitting there waiting for an instant to happen or an incident to happen, you can actually use the cameras to work as a sensor and give you some intelligent reports about the performance of your business. Or if you utilize something with the APIs, you can even extract information from the access point, telling you where your users are, who they are first, where they spend most of their time when they come to your store or your office, and then being able to count them as well. So you see from here, we rely on the network to actually operate as a sensor. We've talked about how they can actually improve the operations, but also we can see a lot of value that we can come back to the business with when we look into how we can utilize those devices as sensors. And the last thing here is the analytics and assurance. How my network can actually go and learn from its problems and get to the point of solving those problems without me interacting with them. And that's kind of the dream of networks, or dream of future networks. And we at Meraki started to do that. So if you look into how Meraki devices operate, it will give you a lot of insights where we're heading as a company and where we're heading as a product. So Meraki devices, they manage from the cloud. When I say manage from the cloud, means all the management traffic hits the cloud, like all the logs, all the reports that we look at. It's actually coming from all the devices that we have in your infrastructure, come to the cloud, and then get stored in the cloud, and then you access it through the dashboard. But when we have that amount of logs hosted or basically sits in the cloud, it helps us to add this artificial intelligence on top to be able to analyze the data there and start to come with useful reports to you. So we talked about something like wireless health, how wireless health can analyze the logs and tell you exactly what's going on in your environment and where you need to fix, where you need to look at to troubleshoot and fix your problems. So that's coming from this concept of having the data stored in the cloud, and we be able to add this artificial intelligence on top. But also, if I look into like how my network can self-heal or solve its problems without me actually interacting as an IT admin, you take something like SD-WAN as a good example here, because if you look into SD-WAN and you can define your policies of how can I actually make my traffic routed when I had performance issues, so I can set the thresholds. So first thing will happen here, we had performance issue on one of the links. My users will not be impacted because the MX will make a decision to move the traffic across to the other good link that you have. But then that's great, so my user is not impacted, but then I need to go and troubleshoot my link, right? That's the next step. So if I use the Meraki APIs, I can actually send an email to my service provider with snapshots of the current performance of the link and tell them, can you please troubleshoot the problem that we're seeing? And then when the case gets solved from our service provider, the MX will identify that the primary link is now performing as it should be, and then move the traffic back and automatically have everything normalized. So from our perspective as an IT admins, first, the network identified a problem, worked on solving this problem by moving the traffic across, which is the temporary solution, and then using the APIs to raise a case with the service provider to solve the problem on a permanent basis. And then when the problem gets solved, the MX moves the traffic back and everything is normalized. So if you look into you as an IT admin, you actually been only notified that we have some performance issues, but then the network is working on solving these problems. And that's where we're taking our products, and that's basically the future of networks, how we can get the network to be smart enough to solve its problems and not spending time or wasting time trying to troubleshoot things that we already know how to solve. And that's the concept of intent-based networking that Cisco actually started in a year or two ago. And you see, Meraki actually is leading this concept because of the cloud and because of how we can actually use this artificial intelligence to improve the reports that we offer to our customers, as well as have those kind of concepts of self-healing and fixing the network's problems without any manual interaction. So before going into the details of the lab, go quickly through what we offer from Meraki. So we do have 6 products that we go to the market with. So you see the wireless access points, the switches, the Meraki SDWAN security appliance, MXs, Meraki Insight, which is a software layer that you can add on the Meraki UTM device, and System Manager, which is the mobile device management product, and the security cameras. The key element here is the dashboard. All devices, all Meraki devices are managed from the dashboard, managed from the cloud. And that's where all the reports, all the intelligence actually sits. And that's also the platform that you're going to use for configuring, troubleshooting, using for reporting on a daily basis. But on the right side, you see the APIs. That's where you can actually benefit from the platform that we offer to you. So if you look into the APIs, you can actually use other systems maybe to configure the dashboard automatically without you doing much on the UI or the user interface that we have there. Or you can extract some information out of the dashboard and use it for other applications or other systems that probably need this input to analyze the data and make up with something useful for you. So the APIs actually is quite powerful. And the great thing about Meraki is open APIs, so anyone can use it, no charges, no fees required. And as I said before, the sky is the limit here. And we will get into the details of the lab. You will see how you can use that to build services on top of what we have.